everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on the University of Liverpool's MSc Sports Business and Management programme. So my name is Ben Piper and I work in the marketing team. I'm going to hand you over shortly to Dr. Susan Minten, the Senior Lecturer in this programme at the University, who will be presenting today's webinar, joined by Stephen Livesey, the Director of Learning Technology, and Joe Shaw from our admissions team. So this session is being recorded and the recording will be shared with everyone who registered for the event and later published on our YouTube account. So there will be a chance for you to see the webinar again at a later date. If you've not attended the Zoom webinar before, you can ask questions during the session by clicking on the Q&A button that you will see towards the bottom of your screen if you're on your computer watching this. You can also use the chat facility to ask questions too. So we are going to go through and answer any questions you have at the end of the session, but do feel free to ask those questions as we go along. So I'll now hand you over to Dr. Minten and start the session. So Sue, over to you. Thank you.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Thank you, Ben. So I'm just explaining what I'm going to cover in my part of the presentation. So I'm going to give you some background to the management school. And then I'm going to talk through the MSc Sport Business and Management. So I'm what's called the Director of Studies for the programme and was led through the writing and development of it. So I'll tell you a little bit about that as well as I go through. And then Stephen is going to cover the virtual learning environment. Joe will cover admissions and enrolment processes. And then if there's any questions at all for any of us, that we'll take those at the end. So and yeah, please feel free to ask questions. It's really helpful for everybody. Okay, so just a little bit about the University of Liverpool for those of you who don't know us. We've been involved in online program delivery for a long time, to be honest. So it means we have a very diverse range of students, and we, as we've said there, we have 10,000 online students. Now, this means we've built up a lot of experience in terms of building, working with online students, building relationships, making sure we've got the right teaching and learning methods to engage online students and support them as well. So we have really strong experiences in this. And then on campus as well, we have a wide range of international students, international staff, which give us a real experience in working with diverse communities of students and really understand the benefits we can get from students working together and sharing ideas and understanding each other's cultures. And this is particularly important for an industry such as sport, which is obviously a global industry, which I'll come back to in a minute. In general, Liverpool University was one of the original red brick universities. Basically means that it was one of the early universities founded in 1881, and we're a member of what's called the Russell Group. So that means we're a member of a group of universities that are really focused on both teaching and research, and that research informs our teaching. So you're really getting cutting edge information and learning when you're undertaking our courses. It also means we're very strong in terms of research and have 9 Nobel laureates. And what I'd say as well at the moment, I'm really proud of the impact that University of Liverpool is having in relation to COVID. So we have strong research teams involved in fighting COVID in terms of public health, but also vaccinations and so on. So it's really proud to be part of a university that is strongly involved with that. So I'm now going to go on to the next slide and just talk you through the MSc Sport Business and Management. Now, oh, sorry, I've missed a slide there. So sorry, a bit more about the management school rather than sport business and management. So a little bit about the management school, which is where sport business and management sits. Now that's really important because what we're drawing on is that depth of experience and again, the research that comes from being in a management school. So it is very much a business and management course, but is very much in that context of sport. So all of us that teach on it and have developed the modules come from the background of sport, but it's very much located within business and management. Something you have to be wary of when you're looking at sport business management courses are they really business and management, or are they bringing in other aspects of sport that may be not so relevant? In terms of the management school, we are what we call triple accredited accredited. So we have AACSB accreditation, AMBO accreditation, and EQUIS accreditation. So what does that mean for you? Well, that basically means that we have to meet strict accreditation criteria in terms of our teaching and learning and research. And then we have to basically go through a review process every, I think it's 3 years, it depends on the accreditation, which means that we have to constantly ensure our quality standards are really high in the way we approach teaching and learning and research. The other thing to say is that our mission as a management school, which is learning to make a difference. Now, for us, and particularly within sport, it's about learning to make a difference in relation to students. So enabling you to undertake this program and ensuring that the program makes a difference to you in terms of your career, but also your approach and the way you think about things, and perhaps challenge and are critical in relation to the wider world, but obviously also making a difference in terms of your career, even whether that be moving into sport or whether you're already in the sport industry and want to move into a higher position. So that also means that our approach to the course is also responsibly driven, if you like. So we're very much underpinned by values of ethics and responsibility and sustainability in how we've written the course, which is really important for the way the sport industry is going. So why choose MSc Sports Business and Management? We have students who come on the course who have never studied sport before and are sometimes career changers. So quite often the students don't really know what is available, what the opportunities are in sport. And there may be some of you in that situation now, or there may be some of you, as I said before, that are looking to move on within the sport industry in terms of moving into management positions. The key thing is to understand is that sport is a global industry. So again, we have students studying the program from all around the world because we're seeing its growth and its development and its economic impact on different countries and its importance. It's grown phenomenally, as I said, in the last 3 decades. So I've been working in the sport industry, both in the industry as a manager and then in academia for the last 30 years. And I've seen immense change in the nature of sport, particularly in terms of its commercial value and how it is marketed and used within countries for economic development, social development, and also its impact on health. So we see an industry that has changed out of all comprehension, certainly from when I first started working in the industry. But what that means is we need people to work within the industry who are highly skilled, able leaders who are able to contribute and move that industry on in order to grow further, but also to ensure the appropriate structures and processes are within that industry.
Okay.
Thank you. What I've tried to do, because there's so much, as you can imagine, to cover in relation to sport, is just put some images up here to get you thinking about what is the sport industry and the different elements of it. And I've tried to choose pictures that represent different aspects for me to talk about. So this also represents the fact that there are a wide range of career opportunities within the industry, and they're still developing and growing. And I'll sort of mention those as I go through these different images. The first one I've got up here, if you look at it's actually a Liverpool versus Toulouse ticket, and that represents an awful lot of things. Obviously, has to be Liverpool. I'm sorry if there's any Everton fans here, to represent the city. I've got Everton later on, you'll see. But what that represents is not only the nature of football clubs and the growth of football, but also behind that, the processes and the systems and the management requirements in order to put a football match on and to manage a stadium. But also within that ticket, we've got Carlsberg there, we've got Adidas there. So you've got all the sponsorship and the marketing sitting behind that as well. And then if we go further into those, we've got businesses that are non-sport in their relationship with sport. And you've obviously got Adidas, who are manufacturers of and retailers in relation to sport. So just within that, we can see a whole range of different management needs and processes, and also roles and jobs just by that representation of that one ticket. So what we cover within the course will cover many of those things. If I move on to the next one, again, representing the commercialization of sport in terms of Formula One, but also the management of those stadiums and those facilities, and the global growth, where we've seen the growth and provision for Formula One around the world, and it being used politically as well when we look at why Formula One is in certain countries. So again, that just gives us a snapshot of some of the issues around sport and some of the needs and requirements. The big one there that we'll look at within the course is the whole idea of sustainability, and how Formula One has needed to think about sustainability, and particularly environmental sustainability. Next one we move on to is horse racing, and I picked that out because we have a strong link with horse racing in the city and within the University of Liverpool in terms of the Grand National and Aintree. And we have, myself included, staff very involved with teaching and research within the horse industry. But what that really draws attention to is betting, and the relationship of betting to sport. And that's something, again, we look at very closely within the programme. And what we're certainly finding in the UK is there's perhaps a reliance on betting, and how do we deal with that issue about some of the tensions that exist between the betting industry and sport. The next one I've particularly picked out is the Black Lives Matter and Colin Kaepernick protest, because what this encapsulates is the fact that sport represents what is going on in society, and it also becomes like almost like a laboratory to see what is going on in society. And often things show up in sport that are going on elsewhere, but are really emphasized within sport. So it's then used as a vehicle to tackle certain social issues. And again, that makes it really interesting to study, but creates all sorts of opportunities within the industry. And then just to quickly move on, I've picked out there the whole industry around health and fitness, both from a commercial point of view, but if we look down below, the whole issues around obesity, and then further on mental health, and that importance of using sport to address those sort of issues. So the social and health impacts of sport are really important. And again, there are roles and opportunities in that side of sport, and that's something, again, that we look at. Then just going along a little bit, my runners in the park, this is something we have in the UK called Park Run, but it has now again become global. But this whole idea of sport at that community level and encouraging people to come together. And post-COVID, that is going to be even more important in relation to getting people outside, interacting, addressing things like their mental health. And then we have, just to pick out another one there, things like the IPL, again, this commercialization and growth of cricket globally. And final one I'll just pick out is, I don't know if you know this image, this is of the South Africa World Cup, where it was a key event in post-apartheid in trying to heal and bring South Africans together. So I've just picked out pictures there really just to get you thinking about, well, what am I studying when I'm looking at sport? So we're looking at it as a business, and we're looking at the management concepts and processes that underpin sport. But what makes it so exciting is all these different facets and these elements of sport, some of them quite controversial, some of them looking at how sport can be used for good in terms of social impact, but it just makes it such an exciting area to study. And I always think I'm very lucky to be involved in teaching and learning within sport in this really, really interesting area of work. Okay, so I'm going to now move on to the next slide, which is looking at how the program is made up. And hopefully, just from that flavour I've given you about the sport industry, this will now begin to make a bit more sense in relation to how we've thought about and designed the program. The first thing to say is I was obviously very heavily involved with designing it, as with all our sport courses, and because we have very close links with the sport industry in its different formats and elements, we obviously worked very closely with employers and sports organisations in putting this together, to making sure that students are studying the activities and gaining knowledge and content that is really relevant, is going to make an impact on the student, but also moving on into the industry as well. So if I can start with the first module you study, if you look at the left-hand side of the screen, which is global context of the sport business. Now, we have this module first, and it's one you have to do first, because we assume no knowledge of sport, of the sport industry. And this is because often people are seeing this as a career change. They've maybe studied something else or in a different career and coming into this, or quite often they're in a specific sector of the sport industry and maybe not so sure about the wider activities and issues going on with sport. So this gives you a really good understanding of the nature of the sport industry, a little bit about its history and background, and in particular its importance in terms of its economic impact, its social impact, environmental impact, and cultural and political impacts as well. So we really get a strong foundation, or give a strong foundation of what this industry is and what this business is. So you have a real understanding and start to understand some of the complexities and the issues associated with the sport industry. You then cover a number of modules related to what I would call the functions and the business processes and practices within sport that are really important and give you a range of experiences and opportunities to go into different areas of the sport industry. So if I just start with the next one round, which is sports marketing and sponsorship. So obviously this is becoming more and more important as sport increasingly commercializes, both, if you like, at the elite end in terms of marketing and particularly working on sponsorship and working with partners, but also at the grassroots end in terms of trying to get more and more people involved in sport. So that module covers all sorts of aspects of sports marketing. But again, it gives you that introduction to what marketing is and that foundation in marketing. And then we look very much in that sports context and some of the specifics around marketing in sport. If we then move on to the next module, that's sports leadership. One of the things I think is really important and has been fed back to us as we've developed the course, and just my experiences working with the industry, is the importance of having responsible leaders who are able to make evidence-based decisions, who are self-reflective and able to make an impact on that industry. So again, we look at the fundamentals of leadership and what that involves. And we take a two-prong approach. One is about your own leadership and how that can be developed. And that is obviously particularly important for those who are looking to move on with their career, as well as people coming into the industry. But also we're really interested in how is sport led in terms of the leaders within sport, but also the leadership situations. So one of the things we also look at is some of the what we call toxic, destructive aspects of leadership in sport around things like doping, match fixing, bullying, these sorts of issues that have arisen and been really been highlighted within sport. So we look at how has that occurred? What is the approach to leadership in sport, which is really interesting in itself. So a mix of looking at the leadership of sport in general, but also your own leadership approach and trying to develop you as a leader. Then moving around in terms of sports finance. So it's obviously critical for any business organization, but it's a really interesting one in sport. Again, looking at from how football clubs, for example, are financed and some of the interesting practices that go on behind football, through to looking at how businesses are run, but also trying to understand how do we understand financial information and how can we use that financial information to make decisions within sports businesses, through to, you know, a lot of sport relies on gaining money from elsewhere in terms of bidding or finding sponsorship, etc. So a whole range of different aspects covered in sport business. A key flagship for our program is the next module, which is Sport Business Analytics. We have some of the world leading experts in sports business analytics here at Liverpool, and we draw on that to look at how can we use data and make sense of data in order to, again, make evidence-based decisions to drive the industry forward. And then just coming down to the bottom, so sports operations management. I mentioned then about stadiums at the start and facilities, and that is very much in terms of how do we manage sports facilities and sports services. And that's been really interesting. It's my particular area under COVID. How do we deal post-COVID in relation to you know, putting on sports events and running our sports operations and facilities. But I know from my own experiences of working with sports organisation, there's been an awful lot of enterprising and creative thinking going on during this time, and innovation that will be taken forward after COVID, even when we're beyond this. Then finally on that as we go around, sports strategy and governance is looking at you know, how do we plan for the future, visioning and looking ahead and developing strategies for sports organisations and also for sports policy, and also that key aspect of governance, and it links back to the issues I raised with sports leadership before, in terms of the responsible leadership of sports organisations. So these are all what we call the functional elements of sport, and they all lead to jobs in their own right. So sports marketing, or working in sports finance, or, you know, managing sports facilities. There's a whole range of different jobs there. And then one of the things we do then at the end of the more formal talk part of the program is this sport business and practice. So this module draws all the different functional modules together to look at case studies. So it's very case study driven, in terms of looking at what are the some of the key organisations within the sport industry and trying to make sense of them and drawing together holistically those different functions of business. So how does marketing work in terms of leadership in relation to finance, etc. So that's then as I say, the what I'd call the more directly taught aspects of the programme. And then it finishes off with a major research project. Now there's a choice here in terms of either doing a work-based project. So if you are working within the industry, or you're working in a voluntary or sense in the industry, which we know is really important for sport, and there's a lot of people involved voluntarily within the sport industry, then you would do a work-based project. So you would identify with that organisation an issue or a problem that needs looking at, and then you would use that for your project. For those of you who are outside of the sport industry, then the alternative is what we call our futures research for sports industries, which really enables you to get to grips with an interesting issue and looking at how that will impact on the industry in the future. And again, in terms of employability, enabling you to be applying for jobs and really understanding what is happening in the industry and what are the key issues facing it, and coming up with some ideas of how they can be addressed as well. So you can see we've thought carefully through how we've put the programme together, and how you flow through the programme, and in relation to, if you like, starting with very limited knowledge and then developing this real expertise as we go through the programme. So the next thing I'm going to focus on is, that was very much about content, is looking at your skills and careers development in relation to the sport industry. So again, we've thought very carefully about this. So each module will, we've identified where you pick up a number of key skills depending on the nature of the module. Now, obviously, you're studying at master's level. So a master's level program is about developing your analytical skills and your critical thinking. Now, that is particularly important for any industry, but we think for the sport industry, because it is growing and developing, and it will, after COVID, it will continue to grow and develop, is that ability to challenge and to critically think about how we do things in the sport industry in order to move it forward and to develop it. And I think that's going to be even more important as things start to return to some normality, is the ability to think about how have we done things before, how could we do things better, and there's a lot of thinking about that through the program in terms of developing your critical thinking and challenging how we maybe have done things in the past. Obviously, the research skills that you develop through the projects, but all the way through, we'll be asking you to undertake research tasks, a lot of problem solving and evidence-based decision making, and the types of assessments that you do. So they're not, you know, there's maybe one or two, write an essay, but generally they're very applied assessments where we're looking at cases or situations where we're asking you to do some research and use that to problem solve and make decisions. Obviously, communication skills within the program. There'll be opportunities to communicate with each other, with us, both through the online platform, but also we'll be asking you to do individual and group presentations and making things like videos through the platform. So really getting you to think about your communication skills. And obviously critical is the digital fluency. You'll naturally develop that through the how you interact with the program activities, but also we'll be focusing on that in things like marketing, where we'll really be looking at how can we improve your digital skills. Ethical awareness and leadership I've already mentioned. International awareness in terms of what we're covering, the cases we cover, but also the students that you're interacting with. And key as well, I think that is really important if you're going to moving on and developing your career within the sport industry, is thinking about our own personal development, increasing our self-awareness so that we can, after we leave the program, we're still learning, we still know how to learn in order to move our careers on. Okay, thank you.
That's great, thank you, Sue. And I would say to anybody who's joined us a little bit later this afternoon, you can ask any questions as we kind of go along through this webinar. You can use the chat to ask questions, or the Q&A button that you'll see on your computer towards the bottom of the screen. So if you have got any questions as we go, please drop those into the chat. We'd love to hear those from you. We'll go through and answer any of those questions at the end of the session. So it's over to you now, Stephen, I think, for the virtual learning environment.
Thanks, Ben, that's great. For this part of the presentation, I'm actually going to share my screen. So let me just switch here to share my screen. Okay, and you should now be able to see the learning platform. Okay, so welcome everybody. My name's Stephen. In this part of the presentation, I'm going to go through the learning environment from the perspective of a demo student. So everything is from the student's point of view. In this little tour, I'll talk a little bit about the platform, so hopefully you get a feel for what the learning environment is like, how you can use it. But then I'll actually go into one of our modules in this program, the first module, and I'll just show you a little bit about how we present the content to you and how you'll work through the content, but also work with each other through discussion forums and so on to contribute to the model. So first of all, this is the VLE. It's a central VLE you'll use to access everything you need for the program. So through here, you'll be able to access all your reading materials, lecture materials, lecturer contact details, assignments, everything through one space. You use the same set of credentials also to access the University of Liverpool online library, which is a fantastic resource full of resources which you can access throughout your program, amongst other platforms such as career support and so on. On the homepage here, we can see there's a navigation on the left-hand side. Every student has a personalized view of their VLE, so you'll only see the modules that you're tied to, and you'll also have a personalized calendar. So as you work through your program, you'll see more modules appear, and in your calendar you'll have various deadlines and so on. And that's just to help you keep track of where you're up to and what you should be working on at any point in time. As I move around the VLE in a second, you'll probably notice, or you might notice in the bottom right-hand corner, we have a support tab. This is a nice little tool for you to ask any frequently asked questions. So you might be writing a discussion forum post for the first time and not sure how to do that. You can, ask it a little question, it'll give you a little guide. Maybe you're not sure how to make a payment. So you could type in, finance, and then there'll be contact details about how to contact the finance team and so on. So throughout your program, you have this support channel. We can also, through the same channel, there is also a live chat function. So you can actually speak directly with our student support team. So perhaps you need a little bit of support in finding a particular resource or finding some feedback from a lecturer. You can go through to live chat, and then you actually start speaking to our student support team directly through the platform. So there's a whole support team there to help you through your program, as well as the academic support that you'll get in your taught module. So what I'll do now is I'll actually go into a module. So the first page I'll look at here is our dashboard. This demo student is tied to a few different things, but you can see here I've got recently accessed modules, and then an overview of the modules that I'm studying and my completion within those modules. And here's that personalized calendar that I mentioned just before. So to go into the first module here, I'll click on the tab. And then this is the module homepage. So we try and design the learning platform so it's nice and simple for students to navigate around. So you should only ever be a couple of clicks from the resources that you need to get to. And we try and make it nice and easy for students to use. Also, I should mention that the VLE is responsive, so you can access this on your mobile, your tablet, PC. The screen will respond depending on which device you're on, so you can access on the go as well. So in the module homepage, we've got a bit of an introduction to the module here. We've got some learning outcomes for the module, space for module announcements. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see on every page of the platform, there's a navigation bar. And now I'm in a module, I've got navigation for this particular module. And we can see that the module's broken up over 8 weeks of study. And I'll go into a week in a second, but we've essentially broken the content up over the period of the module, and there are directed resources within each week. Before I go into the content, I'll show you some of these first few pages first though. So the first one here is a lecturer office. So every module is supported by a lecturer. And the lecturer's role is to answer any academic queries that you might have in this particular module. So if you have a question about the assessment, about some of the academic material, you can go straight to the lecturer to ask them any questions. And this is obviously just a dummy page, but your real contact details for your lecturer for each module will be in here. There's a module schedule. So throughout the module, there'll be a series of milestones. So for example, assessment deadlines are really important milestones. So in this first module, we have an assess discussion forum, which opens in week 3 and closes in week 4. And the deadline would be populated here. There's a live seminar in week 4, another discussion forum a little later on with a different deadline. And then finally, there's an end of module assignment due at the end of the 8 weeks. And again, these deadlines will populate your calendar. And if you wanted to, you can export that calendar and put it in your Outlook, Gmail, whichever calendar you're familiar with, so you can keep on top of which assessments are due, keep on top of the module. I'm not going to go into every one of these pages. I'll just briefly go into additional resources. Really, we just save this space for any wraparound resources that might be applicable to the whole module. So whereas in each week, we have specific resources for that particular week, you may want to look at the whole reading list for the entire module. And here you can click through and do that. You might want to look at the grading criteria for the assessments. Again, you can go into the additional resources here to find those materials. And within every module, this structure is consistent. So the idea being you don't need to you have to look for things. It should be nice and easy to use as you start to spend time on the platform. This particular module has a core textbook, which is the Managing Sport Business Introduction here. Now, I mentioned earlier, you've got access to the University of Liverpool online library, where there are hundreds of thousands of ebooks and journal articles and all sorts of resources. But if there's a core text to the module, we will present this through a different platform called Vital Source, but it's a single sign-on experience. So I've already loaded it up here, but if you click on Access My Book, it'll load up the ebook directly through the platform, and I'm into the ebook. And this ebook platform offers all sorts of really nice functionality. So, for example, if I go to a page, I can use text to speech. I could annotate certain sections of this book. So if I highlight a section and add a note, it'll save my notes directly onto the book. I could then look at this book on my tablet and log in on my tablet, and the same notes will appear across all my different devices. I could change the font size, the background color, all these really nice features. I could also download this book. So if I did want to view it offline, that's a really nice feature for students. If students were able to travel around, perhaps they want to download some resources, they could download this core text. So this is the ebook platform, but you'll also have access to that really rich repository of resources on the online library. So if I go back to the module, I'll go into a week of study, and I'll just show you what a week might look like. So each week has a particular topic. So here we're looking at the globalization of sport. We've got some introductory text and some learning outcomes for the week. But then as I work down the page, we have some activities for students to complete. The first activity here is one of our lecture casts. So the lecture cast is an online version of a lecture. And instead of giving a 1-2 hour long piece of video of someone lecturing to students, what we do is we break up that content into smaller chunks and present it to students in a variety of media. So it ends up looking something like this. So we've got some intro text and some learning outcomes for the lecture. And then as I click begin, introduce the first page here. And here it's a piece of video. So I'll click play. And I'm just going to mute this, but there is there's a voiceover going over the back of this. And the idea being, as we present media and video to students, we'll use a variety of formats. So it may be some stock footage, it may be some animation, it may simply just be some text on the screen sometimes. It really depends what the content's about, but it should be visually engaging and relevant for the content that's being discussed. And you can see here, this first video is only a few minutes. So instead of 1 hour long video to watch, we've broken this up into a series of assets. If I pause that and move on to the next step, click continue, you can see here's a slightly different format. So now I have some text, but there will be there's another video. And if I just skip forward a little bit further, you can see there's a check your knowledge section here. So throughout these lecture casts, there are also opportunities for students just to check that they've understood the content that's gone before. Now, these activities don't contribute to your final grade. It's really just an opportunity for you to engage with the content before you then proceed onto the next section. And what we can also see, if I go back to the home page for the lecture, it'll keep track of where we're up to. So it may be that I want to complete this first section on the first day of the module, but actually then I've got to go to work, I've got to do other commitments. I can then come back and it'll keep track of where I'm up to, so I can work through this content in my own time during that first week. So it's a flexible way of you working through the lecture material. So that's the lecture cast. If I go back to the module, I'll go into week 1 again. There'll be other activities to complete. So in this week, we have a discussion forum. And here we've a piece of video, which is discussing a particular topic. And then, again, let me just mute that. There's a voiceover going over the back of this. So we're giving students a piece of video to watch. There's a prompt for students to respond to. And then at the bottom here, you can see here's space for me now to contribute to this discussion. And this really is where you can engage with your fellow students. So you'll be able to draw in different perspectives from students all over the globe and learn from one another throughout the module through these discussion forums. In this module, the first forum isn't assessed, but then there are discussion forums later on in this module that would be assessed. So your contributions to these discussions would also contribute to your final grade for the module. So you can see there's a range of assessment methods within the module, but they really should engage collaboration with each other. So if I cancel this and go back to week 1, I think the final activity in the first week is a reading list. So what we've done is we've highlighted specifically some resources you should be reading this week. Obviously, you would read around these topics as well. And again, you go to the library for those resources, the online library. The credentials you have for the VLE are the same you have for the library. So this link here takes me to the reading list on the library page, and it's all single sign-on. So it's nice and seamless between the different platforms that we use. We open up all this content at the beginning of the module. The assessments open up at different points, but essentially students will work through the weeks in a chronological order, following that schedule that we looked at a little bit earlier. But essentially, each week we'll have a different topic. There'll be different resources. I think in week 3 there's a case study in this example. So it really depends on what the week is and what the topic is for how we've introduced the different content. Yes, there's a case study in week 3. So there's a variety of content, different opportunities to interact with each other. But hopefully it's an engaging, interactive learning experience rather than a passive one. So hopefully that gives you an oversight of, or an insight into what it's like to study the online modules. What I'll do now is I'll stop sharing this screen and hand over to my colleague Joe, who will talk you through the admissions process.
Great, thank you. Yep, so hi everyone. So like I said, I work in the admissions team, so I'm going to talk through the admissions and enrolment processes for the online programs. So a really good place to start with that is looking at a very simple step-by-step of the whole process, all the way from the beginning up until you're starting a program with us. So we look at the first box there. Kind of the best place to start really is to get in contact with our admissions team. And you can contact us through a number of different methods. So you can email our general email, you can call us on telephone, and we have a live chat system as well. And one that I would recommend is completing an inquiry form. And you can complete that form on the online programs website. So you'll fill in your details and they'll come through to the admissions team, and we'll then contact you and discuss, any questions or any further information that you may have. And then from that point, you'll be assigned a personal admissions advisor as well, who you'll deal with all the way through these enrolment steps until you're starting the program. So you've always got someone to rely on as you're working your way through the process. So then let's say you've inquired about a program and you're ready to go ahead and make an application. You would apply directly to the university. So we have a free online application form, which you can find on the website, or your admissions advisor can give this to you as well. It's absolutely free to apply, so there's no costs involved with making an application to us. And when you complete your form, you'll also be expected to submit a number of different documents as well with an application, so we can review that for you. And we'll talk about those documents in a few minutes' time. Once we have everything from you, we'll then move your application onto an admissions manager and the director of studies as well to formally have a look at the application and assess it appropriately against the entry criteria. Once your application has been accepted, you'll be invited to complete what's called a pre-enrollment review. The pre-enrollment review is just a very simple 10-15 minute telephone conversation that you'll have with your admissions advisor. And in this call, we'll just confirm your offer of a place on the program. And we'll go through the student commitments together and the next steps of the enrolment process too. Basically, it's just to really make sure you're prepared and you've got everything that you need for starting the program. And once we complete that with you, we'll then be able to send you an official offer letter from the university. So then it would just be up to you to formally accept your offer and pay your deposit as well. And then you'll be all good to go on your chosen intake and start studying with us. So in terms of entry requirements for the Sports Business and Management programme, we've got a couple of different entry routes there. So you'll see that the first entry route, the requirements would be a minimum of a 2-1 classification degree, an appropriate subject equivalent to a UK bachelor's degree. Alternatively, we do have an entry route for those candidates who possibly didn't go to university, went straight into industry, or maybe have a lower classification. We can accept your application based on your professional work experience, and they'll all be looked at on a case-by-case basis. So it is definitely an alternative for those kinds of candidates who are still wanting to, study the programme. And finally, just to kind of finish off that bottom part there, it does say that all applicants must reach a minimum requirement standard of English language, and we would need evidence of this as well. Again, we'll talk about that in a second with the other documents which are needed in an application. It's also important to say at this point as well, if you're kind of concerned about the entry requirements, need a bit more information, or don't quite know where your background and your experience fits into those entry requirements, then we do have the dedicated admissions team who are more than happy to talk through your experience and the entry requirements as well. To never feel lost, you know, you do have contacts at the university which are happy to talk through all of this with you. Great, thank you, Ben. So in terms of tuition fees for the programme, our kind of standard fee would be 18,000 Great British pounds for the current academic year. Kind of good news, second point, is that the university is currently offering a scholarship of 15% for all students on this programme on the current academic year again, so applicable to our April intake. As everyone is eligible, there's absolutely nothing that you would need to do, so you don't need to apply for the scholarship. We will just automatically do that reduction for you when you get to the offer stage of the process. So yeah, an extra 15% off there from the 18,000. Furthermore, students who live in England may also be eligible for a postgraduate loan from Student Finance England to part fund some of their fees as well. So that's an option for those candidates. And for everyone as well, we also offer monthly payment plans. So if you weren't able to pay up front, this monthly payment plan will allow you to pay for your programme in equal monthly instalments, so spreading the cost of the tuition over the entire duration of the programme. So that's a really good alternative for splitting the costs and paying in instalments. Great, thank you, Ben. So a little bit more information about payment methods. So really important to kind of get across is that tuition fee is fully inclusive of all costs. So in terms of study materials, access to the library, things like that, it's all included in that course fee. So you'll never be expected to fund kind of extra material which you would need for the programme. We provide that for you through the learning platform and through the e-library as well. For those candidate students who want to pay their fees upfront in one go, then you are entitled to an extra 5% discount as well, and that's on top of that previous 15% scholarship. So extra discounts available for upfront payments. We use an online payment portal which you can pay through for your tuition fees, so it's easy for us and for yourself to track. And also we have a 21-day money-back guarantee if you decide the course isn't quite right for yourself. So that's 21 days after the start date of the programme. You know, if, like it says, if you just decide that it's online study isn't really for yourself, within that 21-day period, you do get a full entitlement to that deposit payment that you'd paid. Okay, thank you. So if you are ready to go ahead and make an application, you can follow the link as detailed on the slide there, or just simply go to our online programs website and you'll be able to see a link to the application form at the top. And these are a list of kind of the standard documents which you would need with an application. So when you are submitting an application, it is good to try and submit as many of these documents as possible, just so we can process your application in as quick as a time as possible. But we'll just have a quick talk through these documents. So first one, photographic ID. So yeah, a scanned or a photographed copy of a passport or a driver's license, for example, would be absolutely fine for that requirement. We'd also need an up-to-date CV. We would need copies of your educational certificates. So that's the degree certificate and the transcripts as well. We need a personal statement. Not really asking for a lot there, just 300 to 500 words or so, just kind of standard detailing your experience, why this program, and what you hope to do with this program in the future, things like that. And we also require a letter of recommendation. So this could be academic, so it could come from a previous tutor or a dissertation supervisor, or it can come from professional as well. So it could come from a supervisor or a manager at your current or a past workplace as well. So they could be anyone like that can do your letter of recommendation. And finally, for those students that need to, we do need evidence of English language proficiency. So IELTS and TOEFL would be our most commonly accepted ones, and we do accept others as well. So if you ever want to discuss English language or any of those other documents, again, the admissions team is happy to talk through all of this with you when you start to begin this process. Great, thank you, Ben. So yeah, just to reiterate, to get in contact with the admissions team if you have any questions, we've got a link to our contact there. You can reach us through email, live chat, through the phone system, or from those inquiry forms as well. Again, there's a link to apply if you are ready. So important kind of dates here. So our enrolment deadline is on the 30th of March. And so all of the steps of the admissions process would need to be completed by the 30th. So that's all the way from submitting an application, being assessed, pre-enrollment review, to accepting your offer, all needs to be done by the 30th. So we would suggest to apply, a good few days at the very least before that deadline so we can get you onto the programme. And then once you meet the enrolment deadline, you'll be starting the programme on the 6th of April, and we look forward to welcoming you on that date as well.
That's great, thank you, Joe. And of course, I've got intakes throughout the in future months over the summer as well. So we'll go at this point over to the Q&A and the questions, and I can see some questions have come in already through the Q&A and the chat. I can see one or two hands were raised as well. So we'll come and look at those questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please use the chat or the Q&A button at this point to ask them. And I'll go back and just see what we've had through as a question. So we've had a question from Michael. It's actually a couple of questions from Michael. The first question, one for you, Joe, is who best to talk to about scholarships, asks Michael.
Yep, so the admissions team would really be best to talk about that. So at the moment, it is just that 15% scholarship for the current academic year. Like I mentioned, you don't need to apply or anything. We kind of take care of that for you, and we'll apply for reduction for you when you get to the offer stage. But of course, if you have any questions about scholarships, then the admissions team would be the best people to ask.
Yeah, Michael also asks, have there been many mature Irish students on the course previously?
Do you want me to take that, Ben?
Yes, please, Sue.
Yeah, so interesting question. We have had Irish students, probably mature students as well, on the on-campus programme. Just off the top of my head, for example, one of our very successful Irish students is now working for the Irish FA. He started out sort of going into the in with the FA, working in their volunteering unit, actually recruiting and managing volunteers in relation to the Irish FA, and then has gone on to work involved with the Euro Championships, which sadly with COVID haven't gone ahead as we thought. But yeah, so just an example there of students Irish coming onto the programme and then going back to Ireland and doing well with the qualification.
That's great, thank you. I've seen a few questions have come in through the chat as well. Guilherme asks, Sue, what are the options for elective module? Is it mandatory 60 credits? Is there a possibility to take a module in football industries or management school?
Okay, so it is a choice of two in terms of that 60 credits. And they are very flexible in terms of what you actually work on. So if football is your particular area of interest, if you're working with that within the industry at the moment, then for an organisation, then you'd obviously work on a work-based project in relation to football and a key problem there. If you're not and you're aspiring to work in the football industry, you would look at what are some of the issues and future issues with regard to the football industry and really focus your project, your dissertation around that. So there's options to really make those final projects very specific to what your needs are into either your interest or your career aspirations. Unfortunately, the football industry's MBA, I presume is what you're talking about, is not online. So we aren't able to access their modules. And the same with the management school. We're using the modules, we've devised them as best we can to fit the needs of the industry. So the only optionality is the choice between those two 60 credit research-based projects. But as I say, you can really make them specific to what you need them to do for you and what you're interested in.
That's great, thank you, Sue. Another question asking about, I suppose, the live sessions on the programme. And the question is, how often is there a live session per week?
Okay, so we don't have live sessions per week. The main reason for that is being online. Most students want to do this in a very flexible manner. And as Stephen identified in his presentation, the way the materials are set up, it means that you are able to study them during the week at your own pace, at your own time. So they're set up really nicely so you can dip in and out if you're not able to put a day aside. And I would be saying you're looking at generally a day a week on the materials, and then obviously as assessments come in a bit more. Every module has a planned what we call synchronous session, where you have a session with your fellow classmates and with the lecturer that is leading that module. So you have that opportunity for every module at a key point in the module. So it varies according to the module. So for example, the first module has a built-in, I think it was week 3 or week 4, where you would come together with your classmates, really to get to know each other and get to know the module leader. So that's important because people are all around the globe. So it's very difficult to have a weekly synchronous live session. Saying that, your tutor is there available for you. They will be interacting with you each week. And also through the discussion boards, you'll be interacting with each other every week as well. But it's just that the one time that you will have that, you have to be here at this time in order to engage with your tutor. I have to also add to that is to some extent optional, because we know people are doing this part-time, and there are issues with getting everybody together at the same time, but we do provide that opportunity within the module.
Great, thank you. So now I would just again remind people, if you've got any questions at this point, please, we'd love to hear those from you, and you can use the chat or the Q&A button to ask those questions now. And I can see again a few more questions have come in. We've got a question, Sue, from Jamal, who's in the IT industry, significant experience over 22 years. In 2017, Jamal completed an MSc in ISM from the University of Liverpool. He's crazy about sports and saw the programme, which is very fascinating, very interesting. And he's just wondering how the programme could help him in terms of career development, how it could help career-wise.
Okay. Obviously, it depends on your career direction. So if you're looking for a career change outside of the IT industry, this will obviously give you, there's a number of ways this will help you. Firstly, if you're going into the sport industry and you want to create a career change, it will show any potential employer that you're serious about this, that you've gone and you've studied sport business management, so they can see that you as I say, you're serious about career change. That then enables you to have the understanding of the industry, both in terms of the context and the environment, but the specific functions of the industry, that gives you that knowledge to move in to the industry. And the third aspect is that it also enables you to see, well, what are the opportunities within the sport industry? Often people have quite narrow views on what is available, what sort of jobs and roles are available within the sport industry. It's actually vast, and our job, we see as part of undertaking this course, is really showing people what are the opportunities and the types of roles that you can move into in the industry, whatever your passion, whether that be in elite sport or grassroots sport or football or cricket or American football, whatever. There are lots of different roles within the industry. And then within that, so for example, if you're in the IT industry, can you then use that expertise and that experience in the IT industry and move into a role that is related within the sport industry? So that it's on lots of different levels. It would be able to help you in terms of your career. Obviously, it depends where you are now and where you want to go. But yes, the other thing to say within that is one of the things we're really keen on is not only giving you that knowledge and the skills, but really getting you to think and reflect on where your career is going. And we've got a couple of key points in the leadership module and within the sport business practice module, where you'll have that opportunity to actually, within the assessments, think about that in terms of your own development. Hope that answers that question.
That's great, thank you. So we've got a few more questions that have come in, and I'll just go through them, I suppose, in chronological order. So one says that they were late to the webinar and is there a recording that they can access afterwards? And I can answer that one, and yes, there will be. So a recording will be made available in the next few days of this session. We are recording this live session, and I'm going to be sending a link by email to everybody who attended, who registered rather, who registered for the session. So that link will be coming out probably later on next week. It will also be put on our website, and it will also be on our YouTube channel. So there will be a recording made available in the next few days for anyone who was a little bit late to the session today. Another question has come in just asking, I suppose, back to the live sessions and based in a different time zone. So perhaps wondering if studies will be affected if I've got difficulty attending, or if there's any sort of issue from people studying from different time zones, Sue.
Yeah, so as I said, if there's one live session per module, we would be looking at probably offering that twice depending on the time zone, so we can cut across time zones because we're obviously aware of that. It would also be recorded as well, so if you have that difficulty, which could be time zone, but probably more likely sometimes it's work just gets in the way, that you would be able to access that. So we will do everything we can, and we'd also make sure you know at the start of the module exactly when that live session would be, so you can get it into your diary and protect it as much as possible. But if all else fails and you aren't able to access it, it does not affect your studies. We've made sure it's something that is really nice to do for you, to enable you to have that extra interaction, but it doesn't affect you know, your assessment or anything like that. And there is that opportunity to have that one-to-one with the module tutor as well. So it's great to do, but not compulsory, if you like.
That's great, thank you. Another question, Sue. We've had a question asking, is there an option to do this programme as a postgraduate diploma or as a postgraduate certificate?
Yes, yeah, there is, yeah. So if you do it as a diploma, basically you don't do the project part, that final 60 credit independent research project. You do all the taught aspects, if you like, the more formal taught aspects. For a diploma, that's for a diploma, and for a certificate, you've caught me here. So I think it's is it 3 or 4 modules that you do?
I think
you
it's
do
4.
4 modules, yeah. So you do 4 modules. The first one you have to do that. We think that is really important as a foundation, but there's a little bit more flexibility when you get beyond that, because we know there may be some of you out there maybe working in the industry but maybe not done a module in finance and sport before, or in leadership and sport, so you're able to access those modules that are specific to you. Obviously that will depend on when the module is running in the cycle, but as they're running quite often, that shouldn't be such a problem as we move on through the programme.
That's great. I was going to ask as well, Joe, do the fees reflect the postgraduate diploma and postgraduate certificate? Is information about fees available for those programmes?
Yeah, you can find all that information on the Sports Business and Management page on the website. But for people listening now, so it would be £6,000 for the certificate and £12,000 for the diploma. And as I mentioned, 18 for the MSc. All 3 of those awards are also eligible for a 15% scholarship as well.
That's great, thank you. Questions coming through the chat, Sue, from Guilherme, asking or saying, already in the football industry, we'll be interested in applying football industries for the elective module. I don't know if this is an option, if we can discuss that offline.
I'm afraid it's not possible to. I'm just reading so I can read it properly. It's not possible to do it as an elective module. Obviously, if you're interested in that football industries, then it's probably best to have a look at that program in itself, particularly if you can come on campus to do that. But it's not within this program. You can't pick up an MBA football module. It's not been approved for that. Saying that, you can obviously pick up as you do these modules, you can generally within the assessment take that more towards towards football, and obviously because we have got that specialism, there is elements of football within the program, but we're very aware that sport is a very wide industry, so we cover a whole range of different sports within that, because we have got an MBA football, to be honest. So the answer is it's not possible to do an elective module in football industries, but you can adapt and undertake assessments in the football context if you want.
That's great, thank you, Sue. Another question's coming through the Q&A. And the question is, what is the expected time to finish the entire programme? And there's a second question asks, is it a case of studying one module at a time? Sue, do you want to perhaps take that one about the time to finish the entire programme? Is there an expected time?
Correct me here if I'm wrong, Joe. I should have checked this. It's 2 years. Yes, I'm getting nods.
Yeah, 2.5 years.
Yeah, 2.5 years. Thank you. And then what was the second question about?
Yeah, there's a second question asking, will it be one module at a time?
Yeah,
so I guess,
sorry, yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah, we've deliberately designed it that way because particularly it's a part-time program. You know, you've got other things going on. To try and to deal with 2 modules at once is quite it's a big ask. So it's best to focus on one at a time because you can really immerse yourself in that module then. So yeah, it's one at a time.
Great. And Joe, is there like a maximum time? I suppose we said that the expected time is around 2.5 years to finish the entire programme. Do we have a maximum period of time that someone would need to complete the programme within?
I believe it's 6 years to complete the entire MSc. So you don't have to commit to 2.5 years if you want to take longer. You can take study breaks in between modules, but it would have to be all completed in 6 years, I believe.
That's great, thank you, Joe. Again, I'll just say to people, it's great to see so many questions coming in this afternoon. If you do have any questions at this point, please use the chat or the Q&A to ask those. We've still got a few minutes left for this webinar, so happy to take any questions at this point. Just have a look back through the questions we had. 1 or 2 questions that came in, I think, a bit earlier on, actually. One question, Joe, was about the degree certificate or the certificate itself that is awarded after completion of the programme. And the question was, is that the same as you would get if you'd completed a programme on campus? Is there any sort of difference between the certificates at the end, or is it the same as you would expect if you were to complete a programme on the campus itself?
Yeah, so there's no differentiation between the online certificates and the on-campus ones. So the degree certificate you get at the end of the programme would look exactly the same as if you'd studied it on campus. So no mention of online study at all. Yeah, no difference there between the certificates.
That's great, thank you, Joe. And so I know we spoke about it a little bit in the presentation itself, touched on it, I think, perhaps in 1 or 2 places. Maybe you could just speak a little bit further on about what assessment looks like on the programme. It'd be interesting for people just to hear a little bit more about what assessment looks like.
Yeah, so again, the way we've designed it is that the assessment is appropriate for the module. So we don't have we have a real variety of assessments as you move through the program, which A, makes it more interesting for you, and B, you know, for different people coming from different learning backgrounds and learning styles, it really helps them take different approaches. So the first thing to say, there's no exams. It's all course but work based. So we've got what we call case study assessments, where you're given case studies of organizations and questions around that using the theory to try and solve the problem within the case study. We've got research-based assessments. So for example, within the data analytics, collecting data, undertaking some analysis of that data to create what we call indications of dashboards, etc., and use that for decision making processes. We've got marketing plans. Within the marketing module, we've got reflective leadership, personal development plans within that. Another one is we get you to work as a group to make a video. So for example, within leadership, that's one of the assessments. So you choose a leader or a leadership situation and make a video around that to do a group presentation. There's another one is a poster presentation, again within a group, where you come together to create a poster about a particular issue and to present that information in a different way. So we really have a wide range of different types of assessments that, as I say, we've looked at what is the module, what we're trying to do in that module, and what's the best way of assessing you, but also use that assessment for your increased learning and also to develop key skills. So we've really thought carefully about our strategies for assessment as you go through, and hopefully they'll be really enjoyable to undertake as well.
That's great, thank you, Sue. Another question we had is obviously the course designed to be flexible for people studying this part-time. Is there a certain perhaps time commitment each week that a student would need to be sort of thinking about, being able to set aside for the programme?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the best way to look at it, if I could put it in very straightforward terms, it's almost a day a week put aside for it. But I don't mean you need to put a day a week. It's roughly that time. So you might be, depending on your situation, it might be you're best doing evenings. So you might need to say, right, I need to do 3 evenings a week of so many hours to make sure I'm up to date with the materials. Now, there will be certain weeks where you have got an assessment. So then obviously the time would go up in relation to that. But I'd be generally saying on that you need to be thinking about it in terms of about a day a week, working on going through the materials, undertaking the discussion tasks and doing the reading basically.
That's lovely, thank you. Again, I'll just give one perhaps final push to ask if there are any questions. Please ask those at this point, either through the chat or the Q&A. I'll just give it another minute to see if any further questions come in. I was going to ask as well, so do we have any guest speakers on the programme? Is that something that's incorporated into?
Yeah, so we have, because again, that's always difficult trying to get people together in certain times. So we will try do that within the programme in terms of live face-to-face. But what we do have, because we have our strong network, we've got what I call little video interviews. So for example, I've worked quite a lot with the horse racing industry and Aintree Racecourse. So I've done interviews with them specifically then to put into the materials. So you get an insight and information from individuals within the industry that no one else does. So we have that within the modules again, as appropriate for the module. We also get involved with various webinars, and we have guest speakers on campus. So the idea is to, where they are online, we can open that up, and if you're available, you can join that as well.
That's brilliant, thank you. I don't see any more questions coming in, so I might just end things there and say thank you to all of the presenters this afternoon, and thank you to everybody who attended. As I said a few minutes ago, a recording will be made available to everyone who registered for the event. That recording will be shared hopefully at some point later next week. If you've got any questions that you go away and perhaps think about in the meantime, do please contact the team via our website. You can still see that contact address there on the screen. We've got the live chat, we've got the telephone number on the website, as well as a contact form. So please do let us know if you have any questions. The team will be happy to follow up and answer those afterwards. Obviously, we look forward to welcoming you onto the programme in the near future. Intake obviously in April, and one again I think is June after April. So that's the next one after April. So we really look forward to seeing you all soon. Thanks again for your time, and enjoy the rest of your afternoons. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.